The front door never opened. Behind a tall wall on a quiet Kensington street, a mansion waited, immaculate, modern, sealed. Designed to Bowie's precise vision, furnished down to the brushstroke, and then simply left. Not sold, not lived in, just closed off, like a paused note in one of his songs. For years, London whispered about the mystery of David Bowie's abandoned house. But for Bowie, homes were never just property. They were mirrors. Each one reflected a chapter of the man who kept rewriting himself. And that locked London house? It became a metaphor for the final unwritten act of his life. By the 2000s, Bowie was no longer the lightning bolt across the sky. He was a quiet man walking the streets of Soho. The world might not have recognized the slim figure buying coffee or pushing a stroller, but that was the point. His Lafayette Street apartment in New York became his fortress of normalcy, a space where he could live without persona, without performance. To those who caught glimpses of him then, Bowie seemed content. He had Iman, their daughter Lexi, a few close friends. Home was no longer the stage. It was the silence between takes. Yet Bowie's soul had always needed motion. He built, abandoned, and reinvented homes the way he reinvented himself. There was Haddon Hall, his first creative kingdom in Beckenham, a decaying Victorian mansion filled with musicians, fabrics, and half-finished songs. Ziggy Stardust was practically born in its attic, and the walls absorbed every chord of that coming transformation. When the house was demolished in the 1970s, Bowie didn't look back. He'd already outgrown it. Then came Mustique, his Caribbean paradise. In 1989, he constructed Britannia Bay, later renamed Mandalay, a Balinese-style dream house built around koi ponds and temple-like pavilions. He loved it until he didn't. The piece was too still, too quiet. "Beautiful, but it stopped me working," he once said. Within a few years, he sold it to poet-publisher Felix Dennis, another mask shed. So when he began restoring the London mansion on Gilston Road in the late 90s, a masterpiece of design by the photographer Christopher Simon Sykes, many assumed it was Bowie's grand homecoming. But when the project was finished, Bowie walked away. The lights never switched on. The house stood perfect and lifeless. What looked like abandonment was, in truth, preparation. Bowie was clearing the stage. In 2013, he broke a decade of silence with The Next Day. No fanfare, no press, just a single image, his face from Heroes, now obscured by a white square. It was both a resurrection and an erasure. The album's very existence was a secret well kept, a prelude to what was coming. But during those sessions, Bowie was already sick. Liver cancer. He told almost no one. A handful of confidants, producer Tony Visconti, a few musicians, learned only fragments of the truth. Even they didn't know how little time he had left. Still, he worked with an almost supernatural focus. Blackstar, his final album, wasn't a swan song written in denial. It was an artist composing his own requiem.
Look up here, I'm in heaven.
He recorded through pain and exhaustion, weaving jazz, darkness, and cryptic poetry into what he knew would be his final statement. In parallel, he developed Lazarus, an off-Broadway musical that extended the story of Major Tom, the doomed astronaut drifting through space. To audiences, it seemed like Bowie revisiting old mythology. To those who listened closer, it was a man haunting his own legend. When the Lazarus music video dropped, the symbolism was unmistakable. Bowie in a hospital bed, eyes blindfolded with buttons, writing from beyond the veil. "Look up here, I'm in heaven," he sang, but nobody realized how literal that line was. On January 8, 2016, his 69th birthday, Blackstar was released. 2 days later, Bowie was gone. His death didn't just shock the world, and it rewired it. The album that arrived as a celebration became an epitaph overnight. Listeners replayed every lyric, searching for meaning, finding messages they'd missed, like clues left behind in a perfectly designed labyrinth. Bowie's end was as deliberate as his art. His will, written years earlier, directed that his ashes be scattered in Bali according to Buddhist rites. Half his estate went to Iman, the rest to his children. A few lifelong friends and staff members received quiet tokens of gratitude, small human gestures from a man who had spent his life orbiting stars. No spectacle, no public funeral, just silence, light, and release. Yet his geography tells the story better than any biography ever could. Up in Woodstock, New York, hidden among the trees, was his true refuge, a sprawling 50-acre estate where he and Iman planned to grow old together. Friends described it as his forever home. He'd walk the woods alone, sketching, thinking. For a man who'd once lived at the speed of fame, Woodstock was sacred stillness, a place where he could finally just be. That's where his ashes were partly scattered, fulfilling a private version of his wish for peace and nature's embrace. Contrast that sanctuary with the London mansion, sealed, immaculate, untouched. Two houses, two versions of Bowie, one where he found peace and one he chose to leave behind. The Kensington home wasn't neglected, it was edited out, the final act of an artist who always knew which scenes to cut. After his death, the houses he'd left behind became monuments. The Mandalay estate in Mustique, now owned by new caretakers, remains a temple of tranquility, its gardens and terraces bearing the faint echo of his laughter. Visitors still describe the atmosphere as haunted but beautiful. The Soho apartment remains private, Iman's home, a living archive of love and memory, and the London mansion, still quiet, a ghost room in the grand architecture of his legend. But not all of Bowie's treasures are locked away. In 2023, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London announced the David Bowie Center for the Study of Performing Arts, housing more than 80,000 artifacts, costumes, lyric sheets, diaries, and artwork. His life's work, once so private, finally offered to the public like an open door. If the Kensington house symbolizes absence, this archive is abundance, the heartbeat of a mind that never stopped creating. Bowie's final year was steeped in paradox. He was dying, but creatively alive in a way he hadn't been in decades. Collaborators recall his humor, his generosity, his precision, and his absolute refusal to be pitied. He'd turn up to the studio with ideas scribbled on index cards, work until exhaustion, then vanish with a wink. When doctors told him there was no more treatment, he didn't slow down. He simply shifted focus. "I always had the sense," Visconti later said, "that he was planning his finale." And indeed he was. Blackstar wasn't just an album, it was architecture. Every lyric, every symbol, every note was placed with deliberate care. The star itself, a black one, on the cover, was printed with a special ink that would reveal hidden constellations when exposed to sunlight. Even his silence had meaning. When he stepped out at the Lazarus premiere in December 2015, thin but radiant, no one guessed it would be his last public appearance. 2 weeks later, he was gone. But Bowie had already written his own epitaph. "I'm a black star. I'm not a film star, I'm not a pop star, I'm not a Marvel star." He had become something else entirely, a constellation of art, memory, and mystery. In the aftermath, fans made pilgrimages to his Soho doorstep, to the Brixton mural where flowers piled up for days, to the digital landscape where every lyric was dissected. But if you ask Bowie what mattered, he might have pointed not to the tributes, but to the spaces he left empty, the rooms where silence said everything. The Kensington mansion remains the most potent of those silences, a home designed for a future he decided to cancel. Perhaps he knew that returning to London, to the birthplace of Ziggy and Aladdin Sane, would close a loop too tightly. Perhaps he wanted to leave one room in his life unfinished. Even now, its gates stand shut, ivy creeping slowly up the walls. Inside, dustless furniture, perfect lines, a stillness that feels chosen. The abandoned estate isn't a tragedy. It's a message, sometimes the most powerful act of creation, his walking away. And so, what did David Bowie truly leave behind? A blueprint for transformation. He left a life arranged like music, houses as verses, cities as choruses, each departure another key change. He left love letters disguised as songs, and songs disguised as prophecies. He left us a final act that turned death into performance art, dignified, defiant, and dazzling. He left silence, in which his voice still echoes. And somewhere, in that quiet Kensington mansion, a shaft of morning light still cuts across an untouched floor. Dust glows like glitter in the air. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear him whisper, "The stars look very different today." If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below, as it helps support this channel. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.